All right. And welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I am your host, Miguela Kasanova, and I've got the honor and the privilege of having the one, the only Jeff Schine. Man, how's it going, man? It's an honor to have you on the show.
Things are going great, man. It's good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And dude, let's do introductions. Tell people where they can find you on social media and any upcoming ventures. Yeah.
Sure. So my social media is actually nice and simple. My Twitter is Twitter? At Jeff Schine. My Instagram is Jeff Schine. And stuff I've got coming up. I mean, you can check me out now on Resident Evil 3. Obviously that just came out. A couple other projects slated for, well, I mean, I hope this year. I guess we're not really sure at this point exactly when. But Disintegration is another game coming out pretty soon. And then Marvel's Avengers with Crystal Dynamics is coming out later on, hopefully this year. Those are a couple things you can see coming up.
Cool. I'm actually working with Marcus Leto to get him on my show to talk about Disintegration.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine, so it's really cool, man.
Marcus and I started to connect after we had begun work on the project, but he's a great dude, and I really enjoy talking to him. He's such a smart guy and with great vision and storytelling. Yeah. I feel really privileged to get to work with him. He's awesome.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And then, you're Steve Rogers, Captain America in the upcoming Avengers. How does that feel, man?
It feels great. I mean, really, it's a great feeling, and it's obviously an honor and a privilege to get a chance to do that. It's one of those things when I think you in the beginning it feels a little surreal, and you can really feel the weight of it, because they're big shoes to fill, and obviously it's a character that people really care about and feel like a great affinity to, and you want to honor and respect the history of the character, and then figure out what your contribution to it is. But it's awesome. It's really it's really a dream come true.
Yeah, true, man. I'm excited to play the game. Actually, I was working with Square Enix last year at E3, and I got to experience a lot of the stuff behind the scenes of what they had at E3 show, both on and off the showroom floor. So it was pretty amazing what you guys have been able to do so far with that.
You may have even seen more than I have at this point.
Possibly.
Yeah, because we got to see some stuff, like a little bit. I saw more at Comic-Con than I did at E3, but I've been really pleased with what I've seen so far.
Cool.
I'm really pleased. I'm excited, and I'm really excited for people to jump into the story.
Yeah,
I think we're telling a really cool, really original story.
Isn't it amazing how gaming has just progressed so far, over the last 30 years, from little pixel characters to 3D realistic models? It's come so far.
It's really changed the way that you tell stories in a game, and it's really changed, I think, the effectiveness of the storytelling. And because of that, I think games are being seen and taken as viable mediums to tell really, complex, complicated, and heartfelt stories, that are character driven. I think in the beginning, games had to be sort of technology driven or action driven, and it was the mechanics of the game that would sell it. Be fun to play, and now the game almost can't be just fun to play; it has to be engaging as well. So you really you need to be firing on all cylinders. But I love that games have become a vehicle to tell stories, because it also it creates a world for you that's limitless. You can do anything you want.
Yeah, true. And man, you mind giving a brief background on yourself, because you're not only a voice actor but also an actor as well, and a gamer. Yeah. How did your journey start?
So I started. I guess I really started when I was a kid, but I wasn't really. I was not one of the actors who sort of knew, or better put, took seriously acting as a child. I was doing it. I was in middle school and I was in plays, but it was more just because that was what kind of everybody did at that particular middle school I grew up in. It was cool to be in the play. So it was plays in middle school, and then I did a little community theater in high school. But it really wasn't until like my senior year, I think, in high school, that it dawned on me that this was something you could pursue as a profession, like that I could do as a career, because it just wasn't part of the conversation growing up. So in high school, I sort of had that realization, and then from there, I kind of went full bore, and I went to college and majored in theater and minored in film and television, and right from there came out to Los Angeles and have been here for the last, I don't know, 13 or 14 years since. So since then, it's been just all in, and that's the only thing I've really been focused on doing.
Where are you originally from, if you don't mind?
No. Yeah, I'm from Connecticut originally. I grew up in a small town in Connecticut called Oxford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, cool. I'm an East Coast guy.
Cool.
Yeah.
How was that transition, going from, from Connecticut to Los Angeles? Like, was that a big cultural shock, or?
I think in some ways it was a cultural shock, but in other ways I felt like incredibly prepared for it because I wanted it so badly. I loved the town I grew up in, but I was aware, I think, from a very young age that the town was, I remember feeling it very sort of like one note. And I knew that there was just more, and I wanted to experience more and try new things and meet different kinds of people. And so by the time I was really ready to move to Los Angeles, I was ready for whatever that experience was. And was really hopeful that I would be one with like a tremendous amount of diversity, different people, different ideas, different thoughts. So I don't know that it was so much as a culture shock as it was, sort of a pleasure to dive into.
Okay. I can understand that. Like because I'm originally from Western Samoa, and I went from Western Samoa when I was 7. And we went to Memphis, Tennessee. My dad's
that's got to be a transition.
Dude, that was huge.
You're asking me about transition. That's a whole universe.
Dude, look, so going to Memphis, because I was 7, I didn't speak English at all. I had to learn English, and then had to.
Did your parents speak English?
Yeah, well, yeah. So my mom's Samoan, Hawaiian, and Tongan, and my dad is he's Italian, Black, and Creole, Creole and Native American. So my dad was in the Marine Corps. So when we moved to Memphis, it was just because he had finally got stationed from being overseas, and so we my mom wanted us to move there and be with him. And then when we got there, it just started like. We started hopping, the whole military brat life. And
I was going to ask you if you moved around a lot.
Yeah, it is like just adjusting to like different places, different things, and like coming from an island where you only spoke one language, you kind of all dressed the same. And, I basically grew up as an agriculture kid, and it's like, I'm here in the city. I don't, understand like nuances, American nuances and stuff like that. So it was a shock. And then at 15, I left Hawaii. Well, not Hawaii. I left Memphis, or I think we were in Memphis. We were somewhere else. I forget where. I'm just gonna say Memphis for the time being because it's relative. But we left the South, somewhere in the South, and came out here. I came out here to Hawaii. My mom was like, "You're gonna go to college," so she tested me out of high school to go straight into college, and it was just that was
what age was that?
I was 15 when I tested out of high school, and 16 when I went to college, because my mom was like super strict. Like Samoan culture, man, they're super strict when it comes to education. Like he's like, no, you're testing out, you're going to school now. And it's like, it was even more of a culture shock because I got so used to like, the East Coast, the South of America. Now I'm here back in Hawaii, and it's so different. And, especially going to college, man, people are so different. I was the youngest person in college, and like there was so much I didn't understand, and it's like I look back on it. I talk to my mom now, and I'm like, why did you do that?
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I remember even thinking sometimes now. I think like even going to college at 18 or 19 or whatever age it was when I started it my freshman year, I remember thinking like I almost wish I went to college. Now when you're more prepared, you're more, sort of open to all these ideas. It's so much, and you're younger than you realize at 18, 19. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's almost better to take some time away. It's why I know it's become more prevalent, but I always think it's a great idea when parents and their kids maybe decide collectively, we're going to take a year off, maybe work or do something productive, and then enter into like college, because there's a real opportunity to learn there. But sometimes I don't think you're in the right headspace for it. Mm-hmm. But just going back to what you're saying really quickly, when you're talking now, looking back, right, at your age now, and looking at all the traveling you did, all the different places you lived and been, it's got to give you such a better perspective, compassion, and they say like travel is the cure for like fear,
No, I agree. This is something like Nick Apostolides, voice of Leon Kennedy. He's one of my best friends, and we talk all the time.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, that's one of my best friends. He actually he called me up. He actually called me up yesterday when my kitten had passed away, because I posted about it. He called me up. He's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." And we do it all the time. We talk all the time, and him and I we were talking about how like we how traveling has just like been such a blessing, because a lot of people, they don't, a lot of people, especially I can speak to like people here in Hawaii, people in Samoa, and even in Tonga, like a lot of people grow up in their area and don't travel their whole life, and it's like when you travel, you get to see so much, experience different cultures, in my 20s. Your perspective changes dramatically. Like in my I'm in my 30s now, but like when I was in my 20s, I did a lot of traveling. When I left college, I went to Washington State, and I worked for Microsoft. I went to New York. I went overseas to other countries, and just seeing people all over the world, in their towns, in their environments, just really helped me understand how things change, how people view and perceive things. And it's something I tell a lot of people, like my nieces and nephews are like, "Oh, I'm going to go straight to college. Oh, I'm going to go and do this." And I'm like, take time, because if I could, now I feel like is the best time, because when you're 18, 17, 19, 20, you don't understand things in the perspective that you would when you're in your later 20s or your 30s. Like
and how could you possibly? Right. Yeah. You're limited. There is a limitation. You're limited by age in a way, right? It's not your fault, and you don't have to apologize for it, but you're limited. You have a limited experience, right? Which is why it's interesting. Like in American culture, we don't value our elders as much as other cultures do, and it's really a shame. I even think about it for myself now, thinking about like my aunt, my uncles or my grandfathers or my grandmothers who have passed away. I'm thinking like, man, at this age now, how much more I would have appreciated the experience they have, the knowledge they have, because it's like at every age, at every major milestone in your life, you think so much, and then you get to the next one and you realize how little you knew, and sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, and I think if you're at a young age, if your funds limited, just travel the United States. I mean, you don't have to even think as broad as like I got to get overseas, or like if your funds restricted, if you don't have a lot of money, just travel around the US, because you don't have to go that far to find a very different cultural dynamic. If you're in the East Coast, go to the Midwest, go to the West Coast. It's a very different mindset, and having an understanding of other people's perspective will help give you, for me, which has been one of the most important life lessons that I've learned, which is just compassion.
Yeah. It's something that my wife is actually from Molokai, which is one of the, I want to say it's like the smallest island out here in Hawaii, and it's a lot of people never even heard of it, but it's very, I guess you could say like very country in a way, very not saying like backwater, but not modernized, like they're not like a metropolis or something like that. And it's her perspective for mine, like we're both from like a agriculture country background, and so like a lot of things like we don't understand, like even now there's certain things that she experiences here in Honolulu since this is kind of like I guess you could say like the LA of Hawaii, like
Mm-hmm.
she's experiencing that, and she's like, oh, I don't fully understand why people do this or why people act this way. And a lot of people are like, oh, but you're all, Hawaii is all the same. Like, no, each island is so dramatically different from one another. And last year it's the first time my wife and I have actually had the opportunity to travel together, because we've been married for 4 years now, going on 5.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we're both content creators. We both went to E3. We went to various conventions last year, and
You guys meet at a convention or something?
Huh?
Like, did you guys meet through like your love of like content like E3 or Comic-Con or like conventions like that?
No. We've actually, my wife and I, we've actually known each other for a little over 10 years now. We met. It's kind of funny. We met at a club. I was a club promoter when I was in my early 20s, and she would come out for college nights, and I met her, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try and see if I can talk to her, because I thought she was cute. And when I tried to approach her, she was unlike every other girl, because, like I said, it's the whole country aspect. So she's talking about agriculture, and I was like, wait, you know agriculture? She's like, yeah, I do. So we started talking about farming and plant life and stuff like that in a club of all places, and we kind of just clicked from there, and we've just been friends for 10 years. And then like we started dating 4.5, 5 years ago, and then within the end of that year we got married. And best person that's ever happened to me.
Oh, that's great, man. That's awesome.
But yeah, but it's just kind of crazy. Like when we started dating, she was into video games, and most like most women I know are not into gaming, and it's I notice like things have changed now where you have a lot of women that are playing games and streaming and stuff. But I'm like, coming up, it was really weird. Not weird in a bad way, but weird in a shocking, surprising way to find a woman or a female that's into gaming. And like when we reconnected 5 years ago, and we hung out at her place, she was playing Super Ghouls and Ghosts on Super Nintendo, and I was like, is that yours, or is that your brother's? Or she's like, no, it's mine.
The one thing if you walk in and she's playing like the current system or something like, but you if she's playing something retro, you got to have that moment where you're like, please be real,
right? So she's playing that, and she's like, oh, I got all these other games too. And so she just pulled out her other stuff, and she had like, she had she had some Resident Evil games, she had Mega Man games, she had classic Castlevania games and stuff like that, NES. Like she's got like her whole collection she has over here, and is part of what you can see over here. And it's like,
is that her corner behind you?
Yeah, she has her old setup over here. That's awesome. So it was crazy. I was like, wait, but you're from Molokai? She's like, yeah, but I'm still a gamer.
So who's more competitive?
Her.
That's so funny. I like too. And I'm a pretty competitive dude, but she's very competitive. Like we can't play anything without it getting very, very heightened. But it's like it's such a great quality. It's so fun.
I'm not sure if your wife is the same way, but mine is like certain games she'll not be good at it. But then when I'm like, hey, do you want me to take over? She's like, no, damn it, I'm gonna figure it out on my own.
Yeah. So my wife's not a gamer, although I am lucky. And I almost think it's like you sort of need this in your relationship, but she totally respects and is interested in and always like wants to participate, but she doesn't play herself. But she'll frequently be like, "Can I watch you play this thing?" Or if I worked on something, she'll want to see. So that is like good enough for me. But where we get really competitive is like she's big into like categories, like word games. But I mean, the woman is outstanding. It is amazing because she can turn anything into a competition.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, yeah, it's great. That's great.
Dude, like I ended up, so, I got a review copy of Resident Evil 3 from Capcom, and then we picked up our collector's edition of it. And so, her community cause she streams too. She does, reviews and content and stuff like that. Like I do. And then she was like, her community was like, hey, would you play Resident Evil 3? Because they've been wanting to see her play a horror game. She's like, oh, I don't know.
Do a
So
live
she
stream?
played. Yeah, so she streamed it, and she was at first she was terrified, like she was having jump scares left and right. And then she got to a point, she's like, screw this. And she started getting better at headshots and dodging. And like I was shocked because, most people I would think, and that was her first Resident Evil she played by herself. So she was, most people I would think would not want to hop into something like that, because typically she plays action games, RPGs, and stuff like that. But she hopped into it, took to a fish to water, and actually beat it in 2 streams. And then she's like, okay, I need to play more. So then she went back and she started playing Resident Evil 2. And then we're going to get her playing Resident Evil Remake and then the entire series. And she's like, I love this. I need to know what happened.
That's dope. That's cool. I love that.
But it's crazy. Like I tell a lot of people, like it's truly a blessing when you have a partner, especially if you're a gamer, that maybe they may not be a gamer, or if they, they'll casually play, but they can respect that you have a passion for it and not be like, put the controller down.
It's funny to me how games for a while fell into this category of like that thing that became divisive, right? It's like you would never have that conversation about something like if your husband or if your wife was a painter. Yeah. If they were painting in the studio for a couple hours, you know what I mean? And I know it's different, or if they were into rock collecting or whatever their hobby is. But like, I find, and the stigma sort of games where you're alone in a room by yourself, antisocial. And, it's so funny. Just last night, I was downstairs in my office and I was playing, and my wife was upstairs watching TV. And I came up and I just kind of like sat on the couch next to her, and I was like, what's like really cool? We're all in quarantine. It's a difficult time. And I'm down there and I'm playing with these 3 guys that I've known, and after I did the math, for 18 years. We met a couple times in person and stuff. But these are dudes that I just like met online 18 years ago. It's like highly social. A lot of times it becomes like, especially now, I've never been more grateful for games or, being able to play online, because it's highly communal. It's sometimes like the only hangout I get a chance to do.
Yeah. It is, and it's like that's the other thing too. Like I was, I think I was talking to some folks in my, that in my community here that are watching now, and I was saying like the older you get, like the less time you have to like hang out with people in real life, and if you're playing online, like I'm the same as you, man. There's some people I've been playing with online since the original Xbox, and I'm still tight with them today, and it's like those, and a lot of them I've never even met. And I'm super close with. And it's just crazy how, as divisive as people try to make gaming, it's really brought a lot of us together.
Absolutely. And again, like, you think about a time like now, it's really a great way to stay connected to people, to feel like your little environment is not as small. And so I'm super grateful to be able to play games, to get to be a part of their creation. Like, I don't know. I think it's a great world and a great universe. And I think more people, I mean, not that the community is small in any way, but I think more people would love it who don't know as much about it. I think if they gave it a shot, they'd probably get into it, because there's a game for everybody.
Yeah. And it's something, because like my mother, like a lot of people are shocked when I say, my mom's like 69 years old. She games, she's the one who got me into RPGs, because when I was growing up, the only thing I would play is like, Street Fighter or Contra and other stuff like that. And when she got the original PlayStation, I think, back in 97, she ended up getting me Mega Man X4, because she knew I was hyped about that. And then she got me Final Fantasy 7. And I didn't want to play that because I was like, oh, Mom, it's got too much reading. Because, I was already coming over the adjusting to English and adjusting to American life. And she's like, you would like it. And so I ended up getting into it. It helped me with reading. It helped me with understanding English better. It helped open me into, getting into fantasy and expanding my imagination. And, that was one of the things, like I did an interview last week with one of the voices of Barrett from the remake that just came out, and I was telling him like how that game helped me out so much, and also with Cody Christian, who's the voice of Cloud. I was like, man, like that game is so special to me, because it really helped me when I was in that transitioning phase, from well, when I say transitioning, let me put emphasis, people, from from another country to American life, and it really helped me. And it's like when I see, you see media like saying games are this and they're that, and I'm like, have you ever played a game?
Yeah, I mean, you can polarize anything if you take it to its extreme, but at the heart of all these things, especially at the heart of games, you're really just talking about storytelling, and and they do become these really important milestones in people's lives. I mean, for me, I think everyone has like, the song you remember at this one particular time, this movie you remember, right? Or like a clothing. But also like for me, there's what game was I playing at that time? What was super important? Certain games stand out. Street Fighter was a big one for me. I remember as a kid, my best friend's father was playing Zelda, and the idea like an adult was playing a game. I remember he finally beat it. His wife bought him like a little trophy with Link on it, and I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. Like, games are milestones,
and it's just crazy. Like a lot of the people, I've gotten the opportunity over the last couple of years to like work with the games industry. Like when Capcom comes out here, the various projects that they've worked on, from Resident Evil 3 to Devil May Cry 5 and more, and being able to work with the Capcom Japan team when they come here, when they go other places, like, seeing what the sound team does, seeing what the motion capture team does, seeing what the voice acting cast does. Like, there's so much that goes into the creation of games now that, when I see people make comments like, oh, this is lazy, they didn't put in effort, I'm like, you have no understanding of how much goes into this.
I remember it was a great example. It's just, I totally like to echo what you said. I remember like talking to one of the tech guys and being like, I forget what game we were talking about, but you can apply it to anything. It doesn't matter. We were talking about, it was like an FPS game. And, he was like, what you don't know is every time a bullet is fired from a gun and hits a surface, someone has to go in and hand draw what caliber round it was. Like every bullet impact, drawn differently. What was the caliber? What surface is it hitting? Was it at an angle? Was it straight on? So it's like there is so much detail being done, and there, and much like in films, you really only get into this stuff, and maybe this is just my feeling, because you love it. Like you have to love it. You got to love games if you're hand drawing every projectile impact. Like, so these are projects of love, and I understand. I get it. Like as a gamer too, sometimes I'm playing something and I'm like, come on, when did they do that? Like that just seems. Then you have to like remember, like, but there's 1,000 reasons why maybe not. And I'm sure I'm sure there's a guy on that team saying the same thing. Like, I wish we had gotten to that thing. I wish we could have done that. But at some point, right, you have to take this thing you work on, you have to package it up, slap a price tag on it, and send it out. The same thing with film. We run into the same thing when we're shooting movies or TV. Like, if you could, you do 900 takes of everything and make sure it was perfect. But and
it's just like getting to see even like with movies. A lot of movies are shot out here in Hawaii, and I've had the pleasure to be able to help out with many of the crews and meet a lot of the people that are out here. Well, they come out here to do like, Hawaii 5-0 or do like the Rock's recent movie, Hobbs and Shaw. It's like getting to meet them and to work with them on their projects, and just seeing how much goes behind the scenes, how much goes into the final product. And it's just, it's like, case in point, it's like what we were talking about earlier about traveling. You get a greater appreciation for what really goes into the making of stuff, and it's absolutely insane.
I think if you're somebody, I think curiosity and awareness and the ability to and the interest to learn is really what like bridges the gap on a lot of things, right? It's the more you know about a subject, the more you know about people, the more the more compassion you have, the more understanding you have, the more connected you feel. So it's like, and then once all that starts to shift, you can have a much greater appreciation for anything. That's why I love documentaries so much about anything. I'll watch a documentary about fucking anything, just because like once you deep dive into something, it becomes interesting. I mean, I watched a documentary on glass blowing, which, I didn't know anything about. And then you start to see all of the intricacy, and like anything can become not only interesting, but inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of your love of documentaries, what are some things that you enjoy, man? Like, what are some of your hobbies and interests? And I know, like, with this interview, we are, and for those who are watching, we are going to get into Resident Evil 3 and more. But y'all know when you come to the show, the focus is my guest and them as a person. So I gotta ask, man, what are some of your hobbies? What are some of the things that you absolutely love? Like, take us down that walk.
Where to begin? I mean, so I'm really into fitness and physicality and movement. I spend a lot of time like learning different disciplines and things like that. Right now, I'm participating in TACFit, which is a system developed by a guy named Scott Sonnen. And I won't like deep dive into it too much, but it's a really smart and intelligent system, and a great way to like stay in shape and gain more mobility in your body. I just recently started rolling jiu-jitsu and training a little Muay Thai, which I really like. I've always just been really interested and fascinated in like the connection to one's body, which has also helped me a lot in my work. Just being able to move, understanding movement. And I'm always thinking about like, man, when I'm old, I want to be able to move. I want to be able to function, do things. I don't want to be stuck because I can't pick up my groceries so I'm really into like fitness, and in those aspects, I'm a film fanatic. I love movies. It's my happy place. If my wife and I can go together, but even sometimes I'll go to the movies by myself. I love it. What else? I'm big into music. What am I listening to now? I'm listening to a lot of Bon Iver right now. The War on Drugs, Churches. What else? I'm big into my dog. We're like dog fanatics over here. My wife and I both. She does a lot of work with like charities with animals, and we have 2 dogs ourselves. What else am I doing? I'm a huge gamer. I mean, actually, and this is beyond just like doing work in games. I've been a gamer my whole life. I even took a brief stab at trying to play professionally when I was much younger. Played some tournaments, won a few. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm into.
That tournament life is real serious. Like, I don't think people understand. Like, if you want to go and be like a professional, video game player, whether it's Call of Duty or Battlefield or Fortnite or Street Fighter, you got to eat, sleep, and live that life.
It's a whole, I mean, look, I think, it's a great example, and it seems odd when we talk about like, in terms of games and having to be that dedicated to be good at playing a game. However, it's the same thing. You have to be that dedicated to be great at anything. Yeah. Like if you want to be great, if you really want to be great, there's that old adage of like the 10,000 hours, right? But in a lot of ways, that's true. It's like if you want to be great at something, you have to put the time in. And being a professional gamer is no different. You got to be on the sticks all day long, and like in the hours. And it's a viable profession at this point. Like what a cool time that if you want to play games for a living, put the work in.
Yeah, yeah. I know. With what you're saying about fitness, dude, I'm huge into fitness myself. A little bit about me. I've shared this before, but I'm 4 years in remission from cancer, so I got 1 more year and I'm completely cancer free. And before I had colorectal cancer, which is it seems to run in my family because my dad is battling it again right now, and one of my older brothers went through it, and what happened with it was when I started going through it, I went from being skinny, in shape, cut, to going through the chemo radiation, stuff like that. It really bloated me, and like my body, like I gained a lot of weight. And since
like systemic inflammation kind of response.
Yeah. And so I've been over the last year and a half, since I've gotten more stable with my health, I've been hitting the gym, doing cardio, hitting the bags, lifting,
Yeah.
You know, I was doing jujitsu at a point, jujitsu, jeet kune do. I was doing Muay Thai, and then trying to do what else did I do? Taekwondo, because we have a Taekwondo school right down the street from where I live.
You're in the pursuit of trying to get access back.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, that system you were talking about earlier, that fitness system. Like, I'm very curious about that because, you know, it's especially hard. Like, a lot of people think it's easy, you know, during this current lockdown to just work out at home. There's a completely different mindset.
It's a mindset thing. And I'll tell you again, I don't think people talk about it enough, right? Because it's easy. Like, look, with like Instagram and social media and stuff, everybody's displaying their best moments, right? And I get that. But like, you know, before, you know, right before quarantine, I was I was on it. It was consistent. The diet was perfect. I was at the gym every day. And I thought once I found out we were going to be in lockdown, I'm like, it'll be okay. I'll just roll this right into. And there was a chunk of time where I couldn't make it happen. And the mindset was different. And you know, such a mental game. But it's one of the things that I love about the gym and fitness in general is it demands of you, and you can learn a lot about yourself. I think you can really learn a lot about yourself in those moments because, you know, even for those of us, and I would say like you and I, who enjoy working out and who appreciate, like, you know, or have had times in their life when they haven't had access to their body or their health, you know, so there's that, and you have a level of appreciation of that, I would imagine, that I don't have. But it can still be hard to find the motivation. And there are probably some days that you work out in spite of how you feel. Like, I don't feel like doing this. I don't really want to go down and hit the bag, or I don't want to drill it out for a minute, or, you know, I don't want to do leg day. Yeah. But
I hate
it's got to get done. But it's like, right. But it's always like, I try, and I don't always succeed at this. And I think it's important that people like hear other people saying, like, sometimes I fail at this miserably. Like, you don't always have the motivation, and sometimes it's really hard to get it together to do that.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the days when you just really don't, like, there's nothing in you that makes you want to go and work out, and you're like, I gotta go. And it's like, because if you don't go, you're gonna beat yourself up about it later. And it's
well, and also when you've gone through not having access, this is what I remember I was trying to say before. When you go through not having access to something, those days you don't want to go, and it's only because you just don't feel like it. You remember how bad you missed it when the choice wasn't yours. Yeah. Right. When you're on the couch because you have to be, you're like, God, I really want to go to the gym. And other days you're like just tired. You don't really feel like it. It's a lazy day. And you're like, you know what I mean? I always try to remember the days when I wished I could have gone and I couldn't. And so I dragged my ass down and do it.
Yeah. So, so for right now, like, the workouts you're doing. So you said that system, like, if you don't mind, like, talking a little bit about that system, that workout system you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's called TACFit. Like I said, Shannon is the guy who invented it or created it. It is it's a system that focuses a lot on, like, this sort of mind-body connection. We use a lot of club bells, some kettlebell work, a lot of body weight movement, and a couple very specific sort of time schemes, like 30 on, 30 off, a little bit of Tabata sometimes. The workouts are usually shorter. They're focused a lot on, like, being able to control breath during the movement. So they're focused on efficiency of movement. It was developed originally, and if I misquote any of this, I hope somebody corrects me, but it was developed originally to help military, first responders, and people like with sort of a job that's very demanding in that way, to be able to, like, efficiently move and be able to have better work output without being as tired. So they found that, like, if you can control breath better, then your output of work can increase without necessarily having to be stronger or fitter, right? It's just that we have a lot of efficiency in breathing. So there's a lot of focus on breath work. There's a lot of focus on, like, the mental side of it. And then just, like, the access to and mobility through, like, all of your joints and being able to access the chain of muscles individually. It's dope system. I also think like it also gets you introduced into like club bells, which I'm not sure if you got a chance to like play around with those at all, but they're a great way to like sort of switch up your fitness routine, and they give you a whole different experience with, 25 pounds on a club bell feels a lot different than 25 pounds on a dumbbell.
Yeah. I definitely, I'm definitely going to look into that, because some of the things like I've done to cool. Like some of the things like I've done to mix it up, because some days I'll do at least, well, before the lockdown, at least 2 times a week I would do like heavy lifting, just for strength, and other than that I would do cardio and bags and rolling around. And I know when Ruben Langdon, the guy who does Ken Masters and Dante, he's another one of my best friends. He comes out here to Hawaii. He stays at my house, and some of the workouts he was showing me with bands, I'm like, really? Like body weight and all that we could do.
Jam.
I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, he carries this thing around, and he wraps it around a pole or a tree or whatever, and does this whole workout. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of bands, the variable resistance and then also under tension.
Yeah. So like, yeah, as you're telling me this, I'm like, I need to deep dive into something else.
Yeah. And it's good to switch it up, like, to just change up the way those things hit your body. I think change and keeping your body guessing is super valuable.
Definitely. All right. So getting into acting, into voice acting, what were the first roles that you've had in both, being an actor and a voice actor?
Sure. With my on-camera career, I think some of the first roles, and some of my favorites were when I was in college. I teamed up with this group of guys. At the time, they were called Ragtag Productions, and they were just a group of college students who were there was a writer and a director and a camera op, and I was lucky enough to I auditioned for their first attempt at a feature film. They ended up casting me in it, and we ended up doing maybe 10 or 12 projects over the course of college. We just worked a lot together, so that was really where I sort of like got my feet wet, being in front of the camera on a consistent basis. And then after that, I did a little work on The Guiding Light when I was a little younger, and then eventually made it to TV, and then for games, I think my first job as a voice actor was actually a commercial. But my first game was Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. Yes, and then I think the first role that sort of I think became more noticed was when I did Javi from The Walking Dead on season 3 for Telltale.
Nice.
But those were kind of the early projects for me.
Nice. And of all the voice work that you've done, like, is there a favorite, not only voice work, but acting that you've done? Is there any particular projects that have been your favorites, or ones that just stood out for you that, if you could do it again, and like you would totally jump on it?
Yeah, I feel really lucky. It's hard to pick a favorite in the context of like, what is my absolute favorite? Because I really feel lucky, and I'm not just saying this, that all of the projects have come at points in my life where they sort of left a mark in some way or another. I'll always have a special affinity, to The Walking Dead, because that really, for me, was kind of like the first that felt like mine, and it was noticed a little bit more. And Call of Duty is going to be special because it was the first one I ever did. It was my first time mocapping, first time doing. Then I get to jump into Resident Evil, and the Cap is coming up, and that is just like iconic and amazing, and the people I get to work with and the other actors. So I don't know, it's hard to pick a favorite, but they're all special in a different way for a different reason at a particular time in my life. And I feel really lucky because I've always had genuinely good experiences. I like any one of those sets or those casts or those people I would revisit in a second if I could.
Nice. So how did it feel when you found out that you landed the role of the iconic Carlos Oliveira for Resident Evil 3? Like, was that a surreal moment for you, or?
Yeah, it was cool, because you're aware of how big the universe is. Resident Evil is, for me as a gamer, and then even if I wasn't a gamer, there's so many films and so much like lore and history into that universe that it's hard to not feel the weight of that and be aware of it. And I was like really excited to get a chance to be a part of it. I actually felt thankful at the time because I didn't really know the original Resident Evil 3 at all. I hadn't played that game. I think the first one I played was Resident Evil 2. And it was nice. It was sort of nice to not have any frame of reference, because I felt really free to just kind of do my own thing and take it in the direction that I wanted to take it in. And I think that was kind of what the team wanted to do as well. But I felt really, privileged, really excited to get a chance to jump in. And I didn't know at the time, like when I was auditioning, I didn't know what the project was going to be.
Okay, cool. And it's something like I've, with a lot of my friends that are voice actors, they tell me this all the time. Like, they'll go in and do 2 or 3 auditions for something and not even know until either. Sometimes it can be as soon as they get the script, or sometimes it can be like several scripts in, like, oh, this is what I'm working on, and it's like a lot of people think that, oh yeah, as soon as you get the role that, this is what you're working on. It's like, no, that's not.
No, especially in games. Especially in games, and it doesn't even really matter the size of the project for the most part, although the bigger the project for sure. But no, especially in games, you do not know what you're working on. At least when you're auditioning. If you're a gamer, you have a little bit of an advantage, because sometimes you could pick up little hints that get left in the script about what the project might be. But frequently you might not know till the day you get on set.
Yeah. So let's see. One of the questions that we got. So what has been your experience voicing Carlos Oliveira in Resident Evil 3, and how has the fan reaction been to your performance in the role?
The experience is great. I loved it. We got to have a lot of fun with the character. The director and I think, had a great relationship and working relationship. And so we were able to really kind of, in a way that felt very organic and fun. And, and we also were lucky enough to have a script that was awesome. The writers did a great job going in. So, it wasn't like, we had a great bones right from the get-go. So the experience was fantastic. I loved doing it, would happily do it again. And the fans are awesome. They're they're really passionate and dedicated group of people. I feel really, happy and privileged that the reception has been great. People seem to really have enjoyed the direction the character's gone in, and kind of like how he occurs in the game now. And I feel really grateful for their support. Welcome. I get I'm getting messages on Instagram, and it feels nice to have people appreciate or enjoy what you do, especially when it's something that you enjoy so much.
Definitely. And were you familiar with his previous portrayal? And did they give you creative freedom to add more of, yourself into the character, or was there any guidelines or anything like that?
No, there was the only guidelines really is sort of how they envision the character initially. But I think what ends up happening, and this is sort of on every project, there's always everyone always has an idea of what the character will be. They really are asking you to come in and contribute the missing piece of it, right? It's like, we can write down on paper, he's gregarious, he's fun, he's got a real serious side, he can be a bit of a dick, or right? And those are all great adjectives to describe somebody. But at the end of the day, a personality has to flesh those things out, right? Because I could describe 11 different people with the same 6 adjectives, and they all occur very differently.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think what you're actually being asked to do as an actor is to make a contribution. So to make a choice, make a contribution, and very frequently it's your own personal vision, and then that either jives with the direction of the project or it doesn't, and you get hired or not based on that. So yeah, certainly I felt like I was able to contribute, my take on Carlos in the game. And it was very much, I think, in line, and then maybe also highlighted or nudged you know, the writing and the director in a certain direction, but it's very collaborative. You know, it's got to start on the page. The director's got to have an idea of where it's going, and then your vision, you know, syncs up with all that, or it doesn't.
Yeah. Do you mind, because I know you did the motion capture as well, but do you mind giving the audience like a breakdown of the motion capture aspect for Resident Evil 3 and what it's about and what it's like?
Sure. Yeah. So I did. So this particular motion capture was done in two parts, or it's two parts happening simultaneously, but it's called motion capture and then performance capture. So motion capture refers to anything, you know, from the neck down, well, head down, but performance capture is facial movement. So the system is you're basically wearing a large unitard made out of like a Velcro sort of material. You have a lot of light reflecting balls positioned at different points of the body on most of the major joints. You also wear an HMC, so a head-mounted camera, a helmet with a camera, either one or two, that comes off the front with a bunch of LEDs to light your face. Your face is also dotted at key muscle positions like your eyes and your mouth and your nose and cheeks, forehead. And so once you're all, that's the sort of practical aspects of it. You're on a stage, which is called the volume, and that stage is usually empty, save for like some blocked out maybe objects in the world. So let's say for one scene we're working around like a large tank. That tank might be represented by, you know, scaffolding or rigging or large boxes. There's hundreds of cameras surrounding you, and then the scene begins and you go. And mocap has to happen in one take. So it's very much like theater in that way. There's no cutting in between. You have to, you know, beginning of the scene to the end of the scene, you have to run it all the way through. And you know, once that begins, if you've ever seen the behind the scenes of any making of any film ever, mocap is no different. You sort of, after all of that, you have to forget about the hundreds of cameras. You have to forget about the two in front of you and forget that you're wearing this ridiculous uniform. And then you have to play the scene and you know, and do the work. In that way, it can challenge the imagination a lot. But if you've loved any comic book movies in the last 5 years, at least one, if not more, scenes in that movie has probably also been mocapped.
Okay. Cool. Got a question. My wife actually asked the question.
Hey.
Lehua Superfina asked, how long did it take you to think of a personality for Carlos?
It didn't take too long. And like I said, because some of that was like on the page. And so you kind of get like, you get a feel. I mean, a lot of it is just, it becomes, and this is like, you work on your craft for a long time and for really forever. But hopefully what that does is it heightens your instincts so that you have like sort of an instinctual response to stuff. And so it wasn't about taking a long time to decide. It was just about making decisions. And it was like, you know, I really felt like you could see that he had this side of him that was a little bit lighter, capable, but like a little bit lighter, kind of like funny, almost like cheesy in a way sometimes. And a lot of times I think what you're doing is you're playing with volumes of yourself. So it's the characteristics that I like sort of already have. And then you're just like, I'm turning up sarcasm a little bit. Maybe I'm turning down this and turning up that. And that's really, you know, kind of what it's like. But how long did it take? I mean, not very long. I sort of think you got to be most of the way there by the time you're ready to go audition. And then when you get on set, those things shift a little bit, but you kind of got to come ready to play.
Okay.
Because they don't know, right? They can't bank on you. Like, you can't go to the audition with no clue.
Yeah.
And then have them go, well, I'm sure he'll be fine after we hire him and we start. It's like they need you to have already made a choice.
I just got a text from Nick Postolides. He said, "Hey Jeff, Miguel, how y'all doing? Watching the show and loving it and enjoying it."
What's up, buddy?
So Spirit Shock had a question. He wanted to ask, as a gamer, what's your unbiased opinion on the backlash of Resident Evil 3's length? There's been a lot, like the length of Resident Evil 3 remake. There's been a lot of I'll tell you this, as someone who, you know, reviews games and works with different outlets and other creators, there has been a lot of review bombing going on with a lot of AAA games that have come out, from Doom Eternal to Resident Evil 3 remake to recent Final Fantasy 7 remake. And it's been a consistent thing. Like it's kind of like it's popular, so I'm gonna trash it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, speaking to that as a generality, I think it's always easier and sometimes can feel it's easier to tear something down than it is to build it up.
Yeah.
I understand, like, everyone's got opinions, and I think everyone should. And I think criticism is important because criticism pushes people to do better, to evaluate their own work and always try to improve. I know. I think he's speaking to, like, sometimes people have said the game has felt short.
Yeah, they're saying it's super short. But what's funny is the original, any of the classic Resident Evil games have never been very long.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't.
Sometimes I think that feeling of, like, it's funny, and I've said this before. I think in some ways, and I understand what he's saying. I think in some ways, though, if as an audience member, you're left feeling like you wanted more, because I've walked out of like 3-hour films and been like, that's it, it's over already.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, that's kind of a good place to leave, and maybe you've actually struck a really good note as a storyteller. If at the end of your story, people are like, give me more, like, what the fuck? That, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to be, to feel that little bit of, like, unsatisfied feeling, So I get it, dude. I get it. We all, I mean, I don't know. Those are decisions that happen way above my pay grade.
Hey, I personally enjoyed it, and I got called out by people saying, "Oh, you're shilling for Capcom because they like you." I'm like,
"Oh, man." Right? I think sometimes it's really hard nowadays. It's like sometimes your opinion is just your opinion, and it's not like you're trying to, like, sell this or shill for that or hate on this or hate on that. It's like, and it doesn't have to be more than that. Like, I'm not loving it so hard that you, like, to try to sell it to you, but I'm also not hating it so bad to try to destroy it. It's just, it's not for me, or it is for me, and that's okay. Yeah. Make your own, enjoy it or don't, and it's totally fine. But people, like, everyone's very, like, we're all very sensitive about people's opinions now. And it's like, opinions are great, man. Everyone has one. Have one. It's okay. But you don't have to cram it down everybody's throat or make that,
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, especially now, like, I've been getting, so a lot of the negative feedback I get when I review something, it's either I'm a shill or I'm selling out or I'm just promoting this, or I'm paid. Apparently I'm paid by companies to review games, even though I can't legally do that.
Yeah. Really, I wish I was. I'd love a check.
Right? Like, pay a bill, please. So,
yeah. Right.
The feedback I get is that I'm too positive. Like, they want me to be more negative and critical. I'm like, I have a whole aspect of my review process where I am critical. Like, hey, there's a whole section where it's like, this wasn't great. This could have been improved. This wasn't at all good, but I see where they were trying to go. But I'm not going to just come out the gate and bash something, because first impressions are oftentimes the lasting ones. And as a journalist and as a reviewer, I feel it's my responsibility not only to the audience who are expecting a quality review, but for the companies that send me stuff. Like, everything on this wall has been sent to me by some type of review, like some company, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Capcom, whatever. And that business relationship between me and them is, okay, you give it to me, I'm going to give you the best review that I possibly can generate. I'm going to cover everything that I can. People think that, oh, you just playing a game for fun, you get a code or they send it to you. I'm like, no, I objectively play it to find what's good, what's bad. That's why, like, when I stream it later, I'm like, I always say, oh, I finally get to enjoy it.
Sure, I get that. I totally get that.
And people don't get it. They think, like, oh, you're just saying it's good. I'm like, no, because back in the day, like for you and I, back in the day, it was magazines or personally playing the game for yourself or word of mouth. We didn't have a Metacritic score where people are like, oh yeah, Metacritic says it's trash, so I'm not going to play it. Or this person says it's not good, so I'm not going to play it. Like, no, we literally had to play games by word of mouth because the internet was not what it was today. So
yeah, and even still, like, look, there have been frequently things that, like, I'll see the Rotten Tomatoes score is low or the Metacritic score is low, but it's like, that for me is always, it's a guidepost. It's not a definitive, you know what I mean? Like I might love something, and it's okay to love something everybody hates, or it's okay to hate something everybody loves.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like it's not that serious. Like take a breather.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's not that serious.
So we gotta I know, being respectful of your time, man. We're gonna wind down to the last couple questions that we got, but we got some audience questions too. We Rogue Dragon 05 says, did you think, Jeff, of the personal space line, or was that in the script?
The personal space line.
I think there was a situation. Yeah.
Personal space. No. That was in the script. That was in the script.
Dude, your delivery of that was perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I really do have to say, I think when things are really working well and firing well, like I said, the script was fantastic when we got it. The writers clearly like had an idea and a vision, and that was great. And I was able to, and it lined up with sort of mine as well. And then, as we were on set, things would organically sort of like mold. So some lines would tweak a little bit, or I did have a little bit of freedom if I wanted to like massage something in one way or the other, but it was really easy to respect the writing because the writing was there.
Okay. Fangirl 98 says, Carlos really surprised me in this remake, how much airtime he has, and that was to me some of the best parts in the game, and Jeff's performance was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Ooh, let's see. Kennedy Ramirez asked, are there any podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah. I like, I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan. I listen to his podcast all the time. I listen to, what else do I listen to that I like a lot? I'm blanking on his name right now, which is super embarrassing.
It's fine. I do it.
Joe Rogan is usually my go-to. I listen to Joe Rogan a lot.
Okay. Let's see. This is kind of a funny one, but Huey.
That was it. Dak Shepard.
Huey L.
I couldn't pull that out if I was paid at that point.
Let's see. Freezy says they missed a lot of the earlier part of the stream of this interview, but Jeff, did you play the game, and have you seen some of the mods for this game?
So I haven't had a chance to play it myself yet, but I have watched a lot of the playthroughs, and I was also, when the game first came out, I was kind of popping into some of the live streams to just say what's up to the community and say hi. So I got to check out some of those. The only mod I've seen a little bit of is and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but is it like is it the facial expressions at 500%?
Mm-hmm.
It's hysterical. It's hysterical.
Rogue Dragon asks, did you ever try to incorporate Carlos's accent from the original? It was terrible.
Yeah, not that accent. We did play with an accent for a second as an idea, but I think we all just agreed sort of unanimously that it felt much more organic to just play it in my regular voice. And I felt good about that choice,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. So, Candy Ramirez is another question. If there's time, is Jeff a fan of Star Wars?
I like Star Wars. I'm a fan for sure. Are you asking me like, am I Star Trek or Star Wars? Like, is it that or just general? Because I know that's like always the question. I like Star Wars. I think Star Wars is great. The original films are like some of my favorites. Obviously, they were huge when I was growing up. My uncle was a massive Star Wars fan. So, Star Wars is outstanding.
I think it was general. I think you didn't.
Let's go general.
Yeah. All right. So, let's see. So, with the can you walk us through like what's the process of becoming like an actor and a voice actor, or more so like a voice actor? Like, what advice or guidance would you give to the viewers and listeners of this podcast that are interested in getting into the industry?
That's a huge conversation.
I know. It's a loaded question.
It's sort of tantamount to like, I want to be a professional painter. I want to be a professional. I want to be a doctor. I want to be, and only in so much as, you know, it's a lot of work. So I'll break it down practically. If you're interested in getting into it, the first thing I would ask is like, are you really? Meaning like, do you love it? Is it really something you want to do? Because you have to love it in order to really be successful at it, I think, because it is challenging and it requires like sacrifice and bravery in a lot of way. And I'm not elevating it above any other profession, period, because I think to be good at whatever you do requires the same thing. If you want to be the best anesthesiologist, if you want to be the best carpenter, if you want to be whatever it is you want to do, it's going to take a tremendous amount of output. I can tell you like how I kind of started. I've been doing on camera, and it wasn't even so much that I wanted to take on a different career. I just wanted to like broaden what I was currently doing, because I feel like the two careers are actually closer related than people sometimes think. But I had to develop a different skill set. So I started reading out loud books, poems, candy wrappers, magazines, whatever I could read out just to get, it's a different technique. And then I started doing, I took a lot of classes, commercial classes, to just get my commercial read sort of together. Then you have to learn the engineering side of it, because you have to sort of be able to engineer your own stuff at home. So learning some of the technical aspects of it, learning how to run even at least a simple program like Twisted Wave, some knowledge of microphones, you know, what you want to speak on, setting up a booth in your home. So you're sort of forced to become an engineer as well as a performer, which is a unique thing about being a voice actor. And then acting for games is very, very, very much all of my training as an actor on camera completely applied. And so I had been doing that for a long time anyway. But even now, I mean, if I have the time, I'll get into class, I'll learn a new technique, I'll take an Alexander course, I'll, you know, read a new book. It's like, you have to be thirsty for knowledge. Like, you have to be. It is your greatest tool as an artist, which is like the ability or the desire to learn.
Yeah.
And then the best piece of advice, if you want to be a voice actor or you want to be an actor in general, start. Start, and then don't stop. If you really love it, don't.
It's you and I, we're on a very similar wavelength, because, you know, I get the question of, how do I become a YouTuber? How do I become a podcaster? How do I get to do this? How do I get to do that? And I'm like, just start. They're like, oh, I want to make sure I get everything perfect, and then I'll jump into it. I'm like,
that's the pitfall. That's the pitfall. And we all still fall into it, right? Like, I'll sometimes not do something because I'm like, and that's a huge pitfall for me personally, which is like, I want it to be perfect. But perfection, it's a farce. And it's only you, and it's really just you hamstringing yourself. Like, I would imagine when you first started, like, you probably didn't know shit. Right? Like, you probably didn't know anything. It's like, I don't know where you definitely weren't as proficient as you were now. You didn't have half the knowledge you have, like, but you had to just like, I'm just going to go. It's like, it's the same kind of notion, like when you're trying to teach a kid to swim, right? It's like, I can tell you practically, well, your arms do this, and you've got to, like, in the water will feel this way. And then you've got to kick, and you've got to be sure to hold your breath and breathe. But at the end of the day, it's like, you got to push your ass in the water and go.
Yeah.
So like, if you want to be a voice actor, you want to podcast or live stream, start. Yes. And just know ahead of time, you're going to fail. Like, I don't book more jobs than I book every week by a large majority. And so does every other actor, you know. For every project you see your favorite actor on or favorite voice actor do, there were 100 he or she didn't get. Yeah. Get comfortable failing. Get really comfortable failing.
And the other thing to add on to what you're saying is, don't look at failure as a negative thing. Look at it as positive reinforcement to get back on the horse and go at it again. Go better, do better.
There's a misconception too. Like, I totally agree with you on failure. And there's also a misconception with like actors, is like between working and then like having a job. So you can always be working as an actor, right? In a class, reading a book, shooting a little scene. I mean, now it's like, and it's daunting, but now it's like with phones as good as they are and simple setups, you can shoot some shit at your house, right? being employed as an actor is a different thing, but you can always be working on your craft. You can always be like, working on stuff. If you want to start voice acting, start your own, start a YouTube channel where you do impersonations of your favorite characters or whatever. Like, you can start anywhere. You won't if you care too much what other people think about it. So learn the subtle art of not giving a shit.
That is an essential skill. It really is. And anyone who's watching now, if you're listening, if there's anything you want to get into or try, think of it now. You have more of a chance of being able to do whatever you want to do now than say you want to get into voice acting. Yeah, ever. 10, 20 years ago, there was no roadmap. Now you've got Google, you've got YouTube, you got the internet. You literally, the only thing holding a lot of people back is themselves, their own fears.
100%. 100%.
So winding down to the last few community questions, and then I'll go ahead and we'll start the wrap up for this show. Again, being respectful of your time. Huey L wanted to ask a question. Did the pandemic have a big effect on your voice acting work?
Interesting. It definitely. So I was fortunate enough. So I do a lot of work from home. I have a studio set up in my house so that I can work. So in some ways, some of my work didn't change very much. In other ways, it changed drastically. Any production which required me to physically be in a space, which is most games, which is even just some other work, like whether it's for animation or commercial or whatever. I'm not able to do. The industry's also had to pivot a lot, so we've had to get better at connecting studios to talent and figuring out how to make working from home possible. But I feel very fortunate to have a setup in my house that enables me to do some work. But yeah, everything changed, everything shifted in one way or another, even if it was just a pivot, right? As opposed to a total shutdown or the disappearance of work. But yeah, opportunities were less and there is less work. But we're doing okay. We'll get through.
Okay.
We'll all go back.
And then we've got a question from Gaming Master O. He wants to know, what takes more of a toll on you, the physical acting or the voice acting?
It really isn't. So sometimes if something is hyper physical, like a fight sequence or something like that, those can be physically demanding, but I really enjoy that physical part and I never feel. So I think you. Let me answer in two parts. If it's physically demanding, just physically, out, fight scenes, things that require a lot of choreography or a lot of sort of mental engagement. But really what becomes the most draining, which has nothing to do with that, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether it's voice or body, is the emotional output of it. So if a scene is highly emotionally, has a high emotional demand, that's usually way more exhausting than anything else you're doing. I remember some scenes, in The Walking Dead, there was one particular day, which was just a heavier day. And that day was way more exhausting and a shorter session than some of the much longer sessions we had run. So it just kind of depends on what content you're working on at the time.
Okay.
But emotional stuff is usually more.
All right. We got a question from Allspark Warrior. He wants to know, Jeff, and I know you can't talk too much on this because of NDAs, and for the audience, non-disclosure agreements, there are many that Jeff and myself are bound to, and we cannot divulge information for various projects we may or may not be working on. So just so you guys understand that before we go forward. But Allspark Warrior want to know, where did your inspiration come from for your portrayal of Captain America and Steve Rogers? If we can't tread there, that's fine.
I'll say I'll just say some of it was pulling into was honing in on some of the characteristics about him as a character from the lore that I found to be the sort of most important, and dialing into those, and then also staying true to his roots and and for me it was important in a small way to keep that sort of that East Coast in him. You know, I think that's good for now.
Okay. But I'm fine with it. I understand, brother. I understand.
You gotta tread light, man.
Super light.
They don't. Every time someone asks me a Marvel question, I'm like,
dude. Okay, so perfect example of that. Like, say, so when when Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I know you did some work in that as well.
Yep.
When that was coming out and all the reviews were dropping, Square gave a specific, when I say specific, I'm talking about 14 pages of you don't say this, you don't cover that, you don't say this or that. And all of us, right? It's like all of us who got codes for it were like, okay, we got to tread lightly. And then you had one YouTuber who decided, screw Square, I'm going to go ahead and put all the spoilers out and bash it. And the problem with that, I'm sure he's having a field day with the legal team there. But at the same time, it's like, I'm looking at stuff like that, why NDAs are so important, because they affect so much.
I think what people realize about it is like, I understand. Well, I mean, I guess that's not true. I really don't. I don't understand the notion of like spoiling stuff or leaking things or hacking things. I really don't. It's just not. I like to be surprised. I like to not know. I don't understand the notion of like, but the other piece of that maybe the individuals that participate in that don't quite understand is like, there's a tremendously large group of people that have put a lot of time, a lot of energy away from their families into creating these things, and they become very personal, and you sort of you tarnish and cheapen all that effort, and so I don't know. I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not either. I'm not either.
It was unnecessary.
Yeah. So winding down to, okay, we got all the community questions. So I had a question for you, and I think this is probably, is it? Yeah, I think it's my last question I have for you. So of all the work you've done over the years, have you ever had the opportunity of working with other voice actors, such as our mutual friend Nick Apostolides or Ruben Langdon, David Hayter or Michael Coleman or Griffin Burns or anyone? Like, have you ever had that opportunity, like one-to-one, like you're doing like a round table recording, or just asking? I'm not sure if my question makes sense, but
like, let me just make sure. Like, you mean like, do we work in groups or like people that I've admired?
Yeah, like, have you worked with people you admired, or have you ever had to, like, when you're recording, like, I know when you're doing like the performance capturing and the motion capturing, a lot of times it's you and the person you're doing the scene with, you're working together, but like when you're recording, like your lines, in the booth. Yeah.
So obviously, like, all your mocap stuff is done just like you would any other on camera medium. So everyone's together. In the booth, a lot of times you're by yourself. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get to do an ensemble read. And I have gotten that experience, and I can tell you, like, it's a great experience, and it's so much more. I mean, look, as an actor, you want to play with other people. You know what I mean? It's not as rich when you're alone, or it creates more of a challenge. You have to create more. You know what I mean? As opposed to having other people contribute. Getting to do some of the work on Avengers, we got to do things together, and then on The Walking Dead, we got to do it a couple times via, like, we Skyped into each other from two different studios. Anytime I get a chance to do that, that's the best. I love being in the booth with other actors. It's so much fun.
Okay. We got actually two. Okay, guys, I'll take these last two questions because we're going to be respectful of Jeff's time. So last two questions. One is from Devil Hunter Nero. He says, Are there any voice actors that you would like to work with, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky to have gotten to work with some already that I really respected. I mean, there's a long list of people that I'd like to work with. I'd love to get a chance to work with. There's some animation guys that I'm really big fans of. I mean, I'd love to get a chance to work with Bob Bergen or Charlie Adler. These are two guys who have, are just icons in animation and games. And there's so much talent in the voice world and so many people that I'd like to be able to work with, mostly because, like I said before, you want to be a student.
Yeah.
Always. In everything you do. You just always want to be learning and be open to learning something new. And if you can kind of check ego, then you really become open to all the experience or just different ways of working. I'm always excited to see the way another actor works, fascinated by their process. You know what I mean? Even if at the end, right, my judgment of it might be like, that performance isn't really for me. That's not for me. But God, I'm fascinated by the way they work. Or, man, it's so interesting how they broke that down. It's like, so, I'd like to work with fucking everybody if I could, because there's always something to learn. Always.
Yeah. And then UltraGamer, he wants you to say this line. I just put it on the screen. So as Carlos like, don't worry guys, I'm not gonna leave you fans in a cold, cruel, Carlos world.
Don't worry guys, I'm not gonna go ahead and leave you in a cold, cruel, Carlos's world. That'd be too cool.
Awesome. Dude, my question, when are we going to see you in Hawaii when this pandemic clears?
Hopefully soon, man. I'd love to come. I would love to. And if I'm there, better believe I'm hitting you up.
Dude, if you need a place to stay, like literally everyone in the industry, they come here. I'm like, stay here, and they stay with me. So we got a 5-bedroom house and we have a room. So if you ever need.
Right on, brother. I love it. We'll be there.
And I lied. I have a final question for you before we go. Sure. Did you have fun?
Hell yeah. I'm really happy to be here. I truly, thanks for having me. It's a fun conversation. You run a really good ship here. It's like nice and chill and relaxed and very welcoming. Thanks to everybody else for who tuned in and was asking questions and stuff. I really appreciate you guys. And I also just want to say, like, I appreciate you being here and being so cool, especially considering like what's going on and what happened with your kid. And so thanks, man. My heart goes out to you as an animal lover. I get it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
And
good. Happy to spend
and again, people, you can catch Jeff on he's all his social media links and are in the description below this podcast, both the video version and the audio version. It'll be going up later. If you haven't already, you're watching this and you haven't picked up Capcom's Resident Evil 3 remake, which he's one of the main stars in, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Go pick up Resident Evil 3 remake. And also, if you want to pre-order, you should definitely go and pre-order Marvel's Avengers that's coming out, that he is playing Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, in. Phenomenal. I've gotten to see a whole lot of it. I can't speak further on it due to NDA. I can't say anything, but it's amazing. I'm not paid to say that. We'll get that clear. But definitely go and check it out, guys. And Jeff, is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go?
No, just a big thank you, guys. I really appreciate everyone being here and hanging out, and thanks for all your support. It means a lot. It really does. And thank you to you, man.
Cool. And you guys can catch this episode of the podcast along with many others on all major podcasting outlets, from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. You can also support the podcast on Patreon, and with channel memberships gets you early and exclusive access to content for as little as $1 a month. It's if you can. You don't have to. I also have a Discord. You guys can hop in and we communicate there, and I let you guys know. And with that being said, this is Jeff and I. We're signing out. We hope y'all have a great one.
Cheers, guys.
Oh, man.